Check me out.
Yeah. Hey there, podcast listening people. As always, we're very grateful to have you here listening in. Do us this small favor before you leave today. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a review, and wherever you see us on social media, give us a follow and give us a shout. We love your guys' feedback. We love hearing from you, and we love hearing your thoughts on the shows we're putting out and the great guest that we've had on. And we have a really fantastic show for you today. We're talking about addiction, drugs, recovery, building businesses, having a fresh outlook on life. Today I brought Scott French onto the show, who battled severe addiction growing up for years and years and years until he ended up thrown in jail and on a journey of recovery, which now he's been over, I think, 12 years sober at this point. And he was challenged, like I feel like a lot of people who have experienced addiction or gone through some form of addiction and recovery, is how do you spend your time? How do you really recover? How do you find that same thrill and that same adrenaline as when you are doing drugs and consuming alcohol and all that stuff? So he started finding solace in activities like surfing and snowboarding and extreme sports. And he is in turn helping other folks in recovery find the same passions and find that same adrenaline rush. And his story, I mean, we talked a lot about his background and like leading up to the point where he is now. So he has founded a organization with his co-founder Eugene called Sober and Stoked. I love what they're doing, and I'm excited to share with you guys their story today. Oh, and by the way, they also did just launch a documentary, which they're looking to promote out and get into certain platforms like Netflix, for example. And so you can find that, Sober and Stoked. We have all the details in the podcast. Before we get there, real quick, if you're interested in partnering up with us one way or another, collaborating, it's something we're absolutely interested in, and we want to help the local Colorado community. So if you think that there would be good partnership opportunity between Mile High Mentors and your organization, send us an email, milehighmentors@gmail.com, or you can always just send us a message over on social media. We're constantly monitoring that stuff. Also, by the way, milehighmentors@gmail.com, just to rephrase that. Also, if you sell products and services business to business, you're going to want to go check out the free training our partners over at Active Blogs are putting on. It's called The Missing Links to LinkedIn Success. If you sell products and services B2B, then you probably know LinkedIn is the place. It's a platform to be on, but a lot of people don't know how to actually use it effectively to grow their business, grow their reach. So that is what that free training is, just for you. Again, activeblogs.com/webinar, and you can give that a watch. All right, folks, without further ado, please welcome Scott French to the Mile High Mentors podcast. First off, I really want to thank you for doing this, brother. We connected almost a year ago now, I think. And you were like right on the verge of getting this movie launched, and here it is. It's live. You just launched it this week, right?
Yeah, we launched last Friday, which is pretty awesome. But Connor, I have to thank you for reaching out to us. But yeah, I think it was just over a year ago. I had gotten a message from you on Instagram, and pretty much what was going on was we launched the idea and said, hey, we're going to make a movie, and we're going to show different athletes that have, lived with their addiction, and then how they are thriving in their recovery. And that was kind of like this pipe dream that we kind of came up with.
No pun intended.
And exactly. No pun intended. And we just got, cracking on it. So it's been awesome. It's kind of funny because when we first did it, we were like, is anybody going to watch this? Is anybody going to be interested in this?
Netflix?
And it's, well, we've reached out to like Netflix and Hulu and all that stuff. So we're still in the beginning stages of getting that. But, we got these sober and stoked hats and shirts and everything. And we go to these different places. Like we were recording in Sedona, Arizona with Chris Fargo, who's a long distance runner. He runs for Hoka One. So we were out there, recording a section with him, and these people were hiking this trail and they're like, sober and stoked. Oh yeah, I heard about you guys. I love what you're doing. We're just blown away, and it's just the social media, Facebook and Instagram, that kind of just took off. Yeah. So we were pretty much just wearing our, t-shirts and, shirts and everything. And people were just reaching out to us everywhere we were filming, just saying, hey, this is great. How can I get involved and things like that. So it's just kind of like this snowball effect. And it's just been awesome. But we've recorded Rebecca Selig. So she skis for Icelandic. So we, did like a ski day with her in Vail, Colorado. We went out to Jersey and filmed some surfing on the beach with Ben Gravy, so it was just funny. Like every time we go to a different location, we'd have these people like, oh my God, I love what you guys are doing. I have a nephew, that just got out of rehab, and then the next thing you know, our inboxes are filled up daily with just people, some of them struggling and some of them just saying, hey, we love what you guys are doing. So the support has been incredible. So,
I think that's hugely missing. Like you said, addiction is rampant in America, which is part of the reason why I really wanted to have you on to share your story. It's unique, and it is awesome what you guys are doing, because not a lot of people consider or even know how to go about when you've lived a life of addiction or even just moderately consuming, drugs and alcohol or whatever. Like, I'm not, completely sober by any means, but I take, a month off every year and just completely detox and cleanse and don't do anything whatsoever. And,
right.
And it's like, it's not that big of a deal for me. It's like, it's not that much of a difference, but a lot of people really struggle with that. Yeah.
Oh, totally. It's kind of funny because when I was growing up, it was, suburban America, I had, both my parents worked. I, really didn't have any struggles in school or anything. I got decent grades, I played lacrosse, I swam, kind of like your, nice childhood growing up. And, once I got into like, 14 years old, the thing is like you hang out with the kids and you drink some beers, and
Mm-hmm.
you smoke some joints and take some bong hits. And the thing I noticed, like immediately right off the bat, I was just like, wow, this is like great. I felt like I was like life of the party. I felt like I was funnier. And I just loved the feeling that, alcohol and, marijuana gave to me. And it wasn't too far after that. I'd say by the time I was 18, I knew that I was having a drinking problem, which is crazy, but there would definitely be times where I would be drinking in the morning, like before school, which, that could typically be a problem. And my friends were just like,
typically,
everybody has those friends that they wake up hungover and they don't ever want to drink again until like the following weekend,
Uh-huh.
And I was the opposite. I was like, I'd wake up hungover and just be like, man, we need to get Bloody Marys. We need to start drinking beer now. Like, let's play beer pong at 8 o'clock in the morning, And so I think like America's been kind of, numbed down to the fact that there's a problem with alcohol because it's accepted socially. The drinking age is 21. Drinking's looking at like it's a great time. It's like a social activity. But there's some that fall through the cracks, and and we're kind of reaching out for those. And then I'm also a huge drug addict. You know, I was involved with the heroin, coke, crack, cocaine, and meth. So, you know, I kind of dabbled in everything, and it took me down to a rock bottom. So, you know, if anybody has problems with alcohol or addiction, my heart goes out to them, and I want to do whatever I can to, you know, get the situation right and help them take back their life.
So Scott, where I might have missed that. Where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Virginia. So I was in Northern Virginia, Fairfax area. It's a suburb of Washington, D.C. So
that is lacrosse territory.
So I grew up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. So when when I was growing up, lacrosse had just really started to take off. So, you know, everybody would, you know, go to lacrosse games, play lacrosse. You know, we were about a 45-minute drive from Bird Stadium, so we'd go watch the University of Maryland play all the time. And UVA had a great team. So, you know, it was a great time to grow up. But then at the same time, you know, we're just a metro ride away from Washington, D.C. So you have these, like, you know, suburban kids that can get into D.C. at the drop of a hat with a metro ticket. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're sitting there going to, you know, clubs and buying drugs, and, you know, it can be you know, it's just a bad scene.
So what, I mean, early, when you were young, you said you started consuming drugs like early, like when you're like 14, right? And right. When you were 18, which were you in college at the time?
Yeah, so I had, so right after I graduated, you know, we were just it was just partying, you know, and I had gotten a job in a restaurant, and you know, it was simple because everybody's like, you know, there was people that were 21 there, and, you know, so it was easy to get access to alcohol, and, you know, and then
I grew up in Fort Collins, where CSU is. I went to high school there, so it definitely resonates. Like, getting access to alcohol early is pretty prevalent for most high school students up there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is like the alcohol is easy to get your hands on. And then the weed, it's so easy to get your hands on, you know? And, so it was just like, you know, I'm going to school and I'm partying, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's how I looked at it, you know? And I was like, everybody's partying, not a big deal. And the thing is somewhere along the line, it's just, you know, and people have different reasons to, you know, kind of justify alcoholism and addiction. It's like, you know, it's a disease, or, you know, however they want to frame it. But the thing is like, I flat out have an addictive personality, you know, even to this day. Like, if I start eating chocolate and candy, you know, I'm like, oh man, let me keep it going.
That's a little better than heroin, though. Just saying. I think that's a little better of a trade-off.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, it's all kind of the same thing. So, like, even when I was smoking weed, I would just want to smoke weed all the time. You know, most people would be like, you know, even my own friends, we'd, you know, pass a joint around, and then we'd be like, all right, let's go do something. I was like, man, let's take bong hits now. You know, like, what's the next step? Like, you know, I just want to sit around and get high the whole time. And that's generally, you know, what was going on. And, you know, I had a group of friends, like a really tight group of friends, that were kind of in the addiction personality with me. And then we kind of spiraled down. And then there was another group of friends that kind of broke off, that were just like, hey, we got to keep our lives in check. We got to, you know, go to school and get better grades and all this stuff. And it just kind of, and then it kind of just went downhill. And then by the time I was 21, you know, I had gotten a job. So I you know, the whole time I'm just going to school, and then, you know, I'd be bartending to, you know, make some money. And, you know, it was just like drinking every single day, you know. So that's kind of how, you know, the whole spiral downhill started.
Were your parents or other people in your family also severe addicts early on, or this was your own progression just in a vacuum, really?
Right. That's a great question. So, my parents do not even drink. So, which was kind of like crazy because you look back at it now and you're like, oh, maybe this is like a rebellion thing that I was doing.
Interesting.
But
It's really interesting.
Yeah. So the thing was,
Were they super conservative, like very restrictive of you as a young child?
Not really. Like I could still go out, I'd still go out and like party with my friends and everything. But you could tell like, there would be times where I was like hungover, and they'd just be like, oh, you shouldn't be like hungover, and then I ended up getting busted for like a DUI when I think I was like 20 years old. So I had to do this rehab thing, with my parents. And then in rehab, I ended up finding out that, my mom's father was like a, alcoholic, big time alcoholic. And that's why she was just turned off to alcohol. And, my dad was just, he just doesn't drink. He had a couple drinks when he was growing up, but, he never really, found a passion for it. And then here I am going, oh my God, my grandfather's an alcoholic. And she was like, yeah. And he would just drink in the morning. And then I'm like, well, geez, that's where I get it from. Because there's days where I would just wake up and go right to the refrigerator. I grab a Bud Light and I grab Jägermeister out of the freezer. I just pour myself a shot, have a Bud Light, and, people would just stare at me like I was crazy. And I was just like, I thought that's what people were supposed to do.
College student. Did you make it all the way through college?
No. So I ended up doing like 4 semesters. And then I was just to the point where I was like, man, I'm spending a bunch of money. I'm not doing anything. I don't really even go to class. So then I got out of school. Then I was just working in restaurants. And then I was like, well, if I want to go back to school, I can just hit community college. And then I just never went back because I was making, this is back in the late 90s. And the restaurants were just pumping. So I was just making so much money that I didn't even feel like I had to go to school.
So what progressed? Like, what was the transition from, you're drinking in the mornings and eventually when you were doing hard drugs, like consistently, right? And that went on for how long?
Yeah. So I'd say by the time so when I was done with school, I was about 20 years old, maybe 21. But so I was working like right outside of Washington, D.C. And, so I was just bartending. So, and I drink socially at the bar. And then everybody I work with would, we'd get an 8-ball at the end of the shift and like hang out at somebody's house. So we're doing like cocaine, pretty much every night. And then the next day you just wake up and, go back to work and do it all over again. And the thing is, it went from, me and like 2 other guys or, a group of people splitting an 8-ball to me just meeting up with these dealers and being like, I need an 8-ball for myself, and once, it was like drinking and cocaine and it was just like an everyday thing. And I was just making a bunch of money. And yeah. Oh yeah. Easily every day. And, and then I met a girl and I was like, yeah, we need to get let's buy a townhouse. So then I had bought a townhouse with her and then we ended up, breaking up. Things didn't work out. So we have to sell this townhouse. And of course it's like the height of, we bought low and we sold pretty high. And, next thing you know, I have like, I guess it was like $39,000 that I made off this townhouse in like a year. And I was like, wow, this is great. This is a lot of money. And one of my friends, he had a great connection with cocaine. And he was like, hey, let me, if we get a bunch of coke, I can sell this for you and then I can pay you back. So that's kind of how everything spiraled downhill, is because I just started buying mass amounts of cocaine and I was just doing it all. And then we were selling, so I was still making money on it. But I mean, I was doing an 8-ball easily every single day, drinking a bottle of Jägermeister. And that was when I was about 24 years old.
Jeez.
So so it spiraled rapidly.
But you at a period of time when you're doing, drinking every day and doing cocaine and all that stuff, did you acknowledge at that point that you were in a downward spiral, or it was just the state of being, like it was just the state of life for you, and there wasn't, like, you didn't really acknowledge the downward spiral you were on at that point, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. So I knew, so in the back of my mind, I knew that this was a huge problem. This was not the way I wanted to live. And I would look in the mirror and just be like, oh my God, I am disintegrating. So I got to the point where I wasn't even, eating really. I was just drinking and doing coke. And I ended up, so I weigh like 175 now. I was 108 pounds.
Oh my God. How tall are you?
So I 6 foot.
Yeah. So it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
For a 6 foot dude. You probably look like Slender Man. Good thing we're around Halloween. Or you probably could have gone as Slender Man for Halloween.
Oh God, yeah. No, it was bad. But it was funny because like I just noticed, like, I had friends that were like, hey, we're really concerned about you. Like, you're drinking a lot, and you're just like a little bit out of control. And I was like, yeah, I know. And then I'd realize that I couldn't hang out with that friend anymore, and I just kept on gravitating towards, like, more addicted people, so I was just like, I mean, it was just gruesome. It was to the point where I was just hanging out with like raging alcoholics. I wouldn't hang out with anybody unless they wanted to do drugs all day and drink all day.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of it, I only had like, a handful of friends that I would call and be like, hey man, what are you doing?
And you were still able to maintain your restaurant job at this point, or you were just selling drugs?
Yeah. No, so I maintained. So the last restaurant job that I had worked for, I ended up going to jail, but I had been at that restaurant for, 6 years.
Mm.
And it was funny because, I'd sit there and I would go in there and I would work, and I had a car. I had a BMW M3. I had a Toyota Tacoma pickup truck. I had a nice place to live. It was nicely furnished. Nothing was, it wasn't crazy. It wasn't like some dark dungeon where you have like this typical, kind of like stereotypical, like addict house or whatever. It was like a nice looking place, but the only thing was, like, I was like a high functioning addict, but inside I was just miserable. I just didn't see a way. I didn't see a way out. I didn't see how I was going to survive, like, living the way I did. And, at the end of the day, that's what like crushed me at night. Like, I was just like trying, I couldn't sleep, not because, I couldn't sleep because I was on a bunch of coke anyway, but, I was like, man, this is just not the way to live. And, once it got, it got, I was in some, dark places, and I had come to realize, like, I was a slave to the alcohol and the drugs. There would be times where I'd have like some buddies that were like, hey, you just get away from it all and come down and let's go to Florida this winter, and I was like, I don't want to fly. I don't want to fly anywhere. I can't bring coke on the plane. Like, why would I want to go? I don't know any, people that do cocaine in Florida. Like, where would I find drugs, So I wouldn't even fly anywhere because I couldn't bring drugs on the plane with me.
Wow.
And that's just, and that's really like a haunting thing to realize. And I'd say, so that was about when I was 26 when it started to get really bad. And it was, I'd try and meet up with some friends and, get a bag of Coke. And they'd be like, we don't have any Coke. I got some heroin though. And I was like, screw it. I was so desperate for just something to get out of my own head.
Right.
That I was like, all right, give me some heroin, and, that's how it was just on heroin. I was on heroin for probably like close to a year. And then I finally was like, this is going to kill me, cause just the withdrawals and the dope sickness that I was like, I have to get off of heroin if I'm going to live. So I ended up just doing, more meth, more Coke. If I couldn't get Coke, I would just do so much meth. I'd smoke it. But I was just like, I got to do whatever I can to get off heroin. And then I ended up just plummeting even further down. And I was out of control. And then finally I got arrested for eluding police and a DUI in 2006. And that ended up being my 5th DUI.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was pretty insane. So
can you drive
caught...
now? Is that a rude question? Can you drive now? Like, are you able to?
No, I can drive. So
yeah.
I didn't get my license back.
I just don't know if
2000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up, without promoting like how I did everything. Mm-hmm. I think they changed the laws now, but so I lived in Northern Virginia, but I was right outside of DC and Maryland, so I could drive Maryland into DC within like 45 minutes of each other. So my first DUI in Virginia, I had a DUI. I completed a, alcohol class. So then I went over to Maryland and I got a license in Maryland and I used a buddy's address, and so they didn't even know, that I had a suspended license in Virginia. And then I had a DUI in DC with a Maryland license. And they didn't even know so they didn't even know that was a second DUI from Virginia. So I had gotten busted in different states and nobody even knew what was happening until the internet finally, these states started to talk and they were like, oh, what the heck? This guy's been blacked out his whole life, type of thing.
Did you, when you were at these, I'm fascinated by the mindset of this, like the mindset that you had. And when you're at your lowest of low, did you still in the back of your mind have that voice that was a massive aspiration for your life? Like, one day I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to do something great. Or was it like, I'm just going to keep doing this till I die? Like, this is how I'm going to go.
Great question. So there was a voice like way down deep inside that was trying to convince me that something had to change. And it's like you have like the angel on one shoulder and you have like the little demon on the other shoulder. And it was a constant battle. And what it was I did not see that there was a way out. And so like, I had done the things where I would go into like rehab. So, over these DWIs, so I'd go in for like rehab for like one stent, like outpatient. I'd pop in there and, I did like the whole, I'm Scott, I'm an alcoholic addict, blah, 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 take some piss tests. And, I'd show that I didn't do any drugs for like 30 days, but I'd drink like, at nights, and then they'd be like, oh, this guy's great. And then they let me go. But I kind of knew like the whole AA rehab, like protocol thing, but I just couldn't.
You knew just enough to play the system to keep doing what you did, basically.
Yeah. I knew what I had to say, to appease, probation officers and, different counselors and things like that, from the state that were kind of like looking over me. And I did what I could just to get off of that initial probation, get a license back and then get out and do it. And then, so I always knew like I knew the answers for what they were looking for. And at the same time, though, I was like, yeah. So I go to these little classes, I talk to these different addicts, and I still have this incredible urge to use and to, get drunk. And, since that didn't work, I figured that was my only option, so that was like, oh, well, I went to, some rehabs and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I am screwed. Maybe I am going to die like this.
Do you feel like the rehab system was broken then and still is today?
Yeah, I think I think it's kind of like a little bit of everything. I think you get some of these rehab places where people are court ordered to go, because they got busted with like possession charges or DWIs. And they're like, okay, I got to appease the courts. I need to go to these classes.
They're just there to check the box. They're not actually interested in recovery, really. Right.
So they're there because if they want to get their license back or if they want to see their kids again, they have to go do these classes. And so you have those tossed in with the people that are actually fighting for their lives. So rehab can be kind of like a weird place. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe this will just, this addiction stuff will kill me. And, the whole time I'm just kind of like, kind of just like drifting through life, just going from one bar to another bar, one dealer to another dealer. And then finally, like my last, the last DUI and eluding police charge, it was a high-speed chase in Virginia. I ended up turning down a dead-end road in a BMW M3. I thought I was just going to outrun this guy. And I was like, oh, my God, this is a dead end. I'm screwed, And the police came, right up behind me, pulled me out of the car. I was pretty much like, kicked around a little bit, hogtied. And I was just like, holy shit, And finally the cop was like, hey, what are you smiling at? And I was like, well, I'm going to get sober from this. And that was my moment where I'm like, well, I know I'm not going to, there's no slap on the wrist this time. This is the time where I'm put away. So, ended up just,
was it almost like in hindsight, was it almost kind of an intentional move?
Yeah. It was like, some people would say like it's a cry for help type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I'm a big fan and I believe everything happens for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just the time where I was like, you know what, this is it. If I can't figure it out now, I'm either going to end up dead or I'm going to end up in jail. So, this is the time where, this is my time to shine. And, so I went to jail and I ended up getting, I did a plea bargain. So I got down to a misdemeanor. So, I ended up doing 7 months, but as a misdemeanor, that's 3.5. So I ended up doing 3.5 months for, the eluding police, but I also had like cocaine, crystal meth and Oxycontin. So that put like, I got that plea down to, I think that was like half a year. So I ended up going in July of 2006, and then I was out like August of 2007. So, but it was like everything in there, it was just this learning experience. But I told everybody, I was like, hey, this is Operation Reincarnation. This is Operation Rehabilitation is what I meant to say. But
right.
So
I like the reincarnation. That was a cool way to say that.
But yeah. So, but yeah, I looked at it like everybody's like, oh, he's incarcerated and like, oh, he's gonna be so bummed. And I was like, man, this is great. Like, so I read the big book. They had the big book in there, so I was reading all about AA. I was reading all about the stories, the steps, and I talked to my cellmates and I was like, hey man, I'm in here because I drank too much and I did drugs. And when I get out, I'm not doing any of that. And he's like, yeah, right. you know? And he's like, everybody in here comes back. And I was just like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, everybody in here is for, you know, possession charges, but they all come back. Like 80% of the people come back. And I was like, no way. He's like, yeah. And I was like, I can't come back. Like, this is it. You know, so I realized I had to do whatever it took to stay clean and sober. You know, there was no, I'm going to get out and I'm going to have a beer with my buddies to celebrate. I'm not going to, you know, there's none of that. There's no, I'm going to go to a wedding and only have like, you know, a couple beers for celebrating a friend's wedding. No, there's none of that, you know.
And you left stone cold and stayed stone cold ever since.
Yep. Yeah.
You never relapsed a single time after that stay.
No. Yeah. So I went in July 20th of 2006 and I've been clean and sober ever since.
Wow. That's
so
incredible and rare. I mean, like you said, a lot of people, like, the system isn't set up for rehabilitation. The system's set up to get you back into the system so they're making money.
Right. And it's like, and that's kind of like the thing now. So kind of like to go kind of full circle with what we did with, you know, Sober and Stoked. It's like, so I got clean and sober in Fairfax County Jail, which is in Virginia. And, you know, the sheriff of Fairfax County, it's Stacy Kincaid, but she is like amazing. She's actually about like rehabilitating these people, you know, so she's bringing in like, you know, she wants the people that actually are locked up that want to be sober. She wants to give them the opportunity to do like a run group, you know, have, you know, access to like different meetings, AA meetings, you know, have access to like AA books. She's actually going to be screening our movie, 6 Gifts, which we have the 6 different athletes, you know, living their dream with their, you know, in sobriety. So, which is awesome. And so I'm going to be going and speaking with them. But the thing is so many times people are like, you know, I just can't, there's no way out. Like I can't figure it out. And the thing is so many addicts bring this getting clean and sober. They make it this huge ordeal. And I did, you know, when I was down at the bottom, I was like, there's no way. Like, I can't see me living without a drink, you know? And I had just been thinking so long-term when all I had to do was think about, I can't use drugs and I can't drink today. That's it. I don't have to worry about the future. Just for today, I'm going to be sober. You know, so a lot of people, they bring so much like anxiety and everything into their own lives because they think of this huge, long goal. Mm-hmm. But it's like, really what it is.
Standing at the base of a 14er and you're looking up, you're like, holy.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah. And you're
it's
like,
just
man.
It's just one little baby step.
All you have to do. Yeah. All you have to do is just start going one step. You know, next thing you know, you're up to, you know, you're 1.5 miles in, you're making progress, you know, you might have to stop and, you know, take some breaths and, you know, kind of recollect yourself, but, you know, just keep on going one step in front of the other, you know, and you still make progress. But yes, the same exact way. And so many people are like, you know, like, yeah, looking at a 14er be like, oh my God, that is so far up there.
Right.
Oh.
And that's sobriety,
you know, and
to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Do you, I'm super curious, do you have people that come to you who they're not necessarily addicts, but they know that they're not living their life to the fullest because of substances? And is that a common factor as well? Or is it mostly people who are like very highly addictive that it's like, it's a hardcore thing? Either they're in or they're out.
Right. So we have both of them. And I mean, I'm all about, you know, either way, I'm all about, like, if people are sitting there and they can't even function without a drink, you know, that's who I was. That's who my heart goes out for. Mm-hmm. Like, I do anything I can. I'm on the phone with them like every single day, you know. I'm like, man, we got to get this guy on some skis, you know, or whatever they want to do. Like, there's a lot of people that, you know, they were, you know, one of my buddies used to skateboard all the time. Just, he was like a great skater. He was in the half pipe. He did like a bunch of like different street competitions and never even picked up a skateboard. Like, you know, the past 10 years, went out and got clean and sober, and now he's back into skating. And I'm just like, yeah, you know, it's things like that. But then there's also, we get somebody that's just like, they don't even, you know, they might only drink, you know, on the weekends, but when they drink, they just feel like, you know, their life is slipping away from them, you know, and they're like, how do you do it? I'm just like, yeah, next weekend, like Friday, like have a different plan, you know, you know, when you wake up in the morning, just take it one day at a time. Like today, I'm not drinking, you know. A lot of people get, you know, if they get hungry, they think that craving, like an empty belly, is like craving alcohol. You know, if you were to put food in your stomach, you'd feel better, you know. And like some people just have to like kind of retrain their body, you know. But there's definitely a couple guys.
So interesting you say that too. Like I've been over the last several months, I've been very much into fasting intermittently, and like it's so interesting that you say it like that, because like that feeling of like, if I don't eat, I'm gonna die right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's crazy.
But you make it through it. You make it through it, no matter how tough it is. You can just get past that little hump there. You can get to the other side.
Right. And so like another saying that I had, this too shall pass, you know? So, I mean, I say that to myself. So that first year, you know, and I'm locked up, so I can't even, you know, I'm not even like going to parties. I'm not going out, you know, I'm going into a cell, you know, and,
hey, whatever you did,
opportunity.
You're getting a little faint there. I don't know if you moved further from the phone, but you're like a little fainter.
Okay, I gotcha.
Oh, that's better.
Okay.
You got a good voice, man. You got to showcase it off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, with this too shall pass. So that first year, you know, I just felt like I was like, oh man, these cravings, like, oh, I can't imagine. Like I'd do anything for a drink right now.
What was it like when you're in, like going, did they facilitate any sort of like withdrawal, or you just had to go in stone cold and just like go through withdrawals while you're in prison?
So when I went into jail, they were like, are you an alcoholic? And I was like, yeah, big time. And they're like, oh, okay. And they gave me a mattress. And I was like in my own little cell block, like on this concrete slab. But, you know, I was like going through DTs, you know, sweating all over the place, like having nightmares, couldn't sleep.
Hallucinating.
Bright light on the ceiling. Yeah. Yeah. And it was like 5 days. It might have even been more than 5 days, but it was just like, it sucked, you know? And I remember they finally like came to me, and they're, you know, I like took a shower, I got all cleaned up, and they were moving me up to like 4A, like another, you know, I was up there with like nonviolent, you know, alcohol and possession, you know, guys up there. And, you know, and I just remember like, you know, whether it's 5 or 6, however many days it was, I just remember like being like, oh my God, thank God that's behind me. And I never want to do that again. And I knew
facilitate that in any way, like didn't give you any, because that's dangerous. Like that's how most people die, is from alcohol withdrawals, right? It's not even so much like cocaine or heroin. Alcohol withdrawals is one of the major deaths.
Yeah, no. So they kept watch on me. You know, so they would sit by and they'd walk around, you know, but I was pretty much like, I guess I was on like B floor or whatever, but they pretty much had like the same people they figured were going to be detoxing in the same area. And, you know, there was a guard on watch, but we weren't like, you know, we weren't, you know, provided with any medications or anything. We would get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And, you know, and it was just a nightmare. And then I finally remember just being like, oh my God, thank God that's over. And I can't live through that ever again. And I knew that if I were to have a drink again, just because of my addictive personality, that if I were just to go out for, a couple beers with my buddies, that I would be right back to where I was, and I'd have to go through detox all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of been like the saving grace. Like, I cannot do that again. I just know what's at stake. Like, I've come so far that, one drink is too many and 1,000's not enough, And
I saw you post that on Instagram the other day.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, and it's true because, that one drink, everybody thinks that one drink, that casual one drink, but that puts you right back to, to where you were.
Right.
And then, you drink 1,000 drinks and it's, you're still going to be chasing. So, but yeah, everything happens for a reason. So, I went through that, that detox, and I was like, oh, thank God that's over, So then I was up there in the, and then I'm up there in a jail cell with all these other guys.
Yeah.
And it was just weird because I kind of felt like I had this new hope in my life, and I'm telling all these guys, they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to get out of here and like live a sober life. And they're just like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Mm-hmm.
But it was true. And then, there was only, in that like tier, I guess there was like 40 some guys. And I think there was only one other guy that was kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to drink again. Like my kids don't talk to me. My wife hates me, but everybody else, I was in there with, guys that had like 4 or 5 DUIs. And they're just like, oh no, I'm going to move to, I'm going to move my apartment right across the street from the bar I drink at. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, oh, so you won't drink and drive anymore, but you're still going to just, So it was just weird. Everybody makes these excuses that they're not an addict or an alcoholic. And it was just crazy to me, and kind of eye opening.
So,
and,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, who, like, when and what brought you out to Colorado?
Awesome. So when I got out of, so then I was released out of prison. It was like August of 2007. And my buddy, so I had 2 other guys that I would drink with and party with. And they ended up, before I went into jail, they ended up going clean and sober. And one of my buddies just disappeared from the group and kind of did his own thing. He just woke up one day and was like, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not doing drugs. I'm going to focus on getting my life together and just working. And then one of my other buddies was like, I'm just going to go to rehab. And then I waited until I could get as close to the very rock bottom without dying as I could. But when I got out, those 2 had already been, sober for some time. And one of the guys lived at St. Thomas down on the beach. And then the other guy lived in Virginia. But we got out. My buddy Matt, who lived in Virginia, was like, okay, we got to go surfing. And I was like, all right, let's do that. And he goes, if you want to stay clean and sober, you got to get something. You got to find a hobby. And I was like, okay. And so he's like, yeah, let's go surfing in St. Thomas and meet up with Eugene. And I was like, all right, sounds good. And so Matt and I, when we worked together, we would also go on these snowboarding trips. And so he calls me one day and he's like, how you feeling? I was like, I'm feeling pretty good. Like I got a job, I'm doing this thing. I'm not drinking or anything. And he was like, you know what? I think we have to go on a ski trip. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, we're going to go to Jackson Hole. And I was like, okay, Jackson Hole, let's do it. And so we went up, we ended up going up like January, Jackson Hole. It was like, we stayed there for like 5 days or something. And it just dumped every single day. And we were just snowboarding in this, it's like waist deep powder, and he's like, dude, this is what it's about right here. And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. And they opened the tram up. I remember, he was like back there eating breakfast or whatever. And I get up on the tram. It was like the first tram of the day. And I go up there and I'm just sitting up on the top of the mountain. And I was just looking down and I was just crying. I just had tears in my eyes. And I was just like so stoked, if everything that had just happened in the past like 2 years, from being absolute rock bottom to not even realizing if I was, I didn't even know if I was going to live. I was 108 pounds. I couldn't even, I would eat like food and I would just throw up immediately because my body didn't want any food. It was like, it's not drugs, it's not alcohol, get rid of it, and to go, through the prison system, to get locked up and to just feel like, am I ever going to, become anything after this? So all of a sudden I'm at Jackson Hole and I was like, I grew up snowboarding and skiing and I was just like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I have to do to stay alive. And I just went down and that was probably like the best feeling I've had. That's when I felt like I was, Scott French again. Like I grew up, I was like this athletic kid, like, oh yeah, let's party. But, the party, the whole alcohol and drug took me down. But that whole, I want to live my best life, that was like rejuvenated. And it just sparked a fire, man. I was just like, dude, this is what's up. And, and then we got back from Jackson Hole and I was still living in Virginia. So I'm, and then that winter I'm skiing like the icy east, I'm in Pennsylvania, like, just scraping my edges. But
like, man, this is lame.
Yeah. So I was like, damn, this just, it sucks, but it was good to be out
this
there.
This almost put me right back into my addiction. It's so bad out here.
Yeah, exactly. But it was kind of funny because it was like, dude, like this is really cool, but I got to figure out, I got to get out west, so then like the following year or then that spring I went surfing and Eugene, who started Sober and Stoked with me, he was working at a restaurant down there. And, so he was sober. We flew into St. Thomas. And St. Thomas, it's the Caribbean island, so everybody knows like the bay there, so it's really flat. But around like this one side of Halls Beach, there's a huge wave break. There's a swell that comes across. It's a reef break, and so we went out there, and it was like double overhead surf. It was incredible, and that was like the best surf of like, my life that I could remember at the time. And I was like, damn, this is what's up, surfing. I feel so good right now, and I was like, this is better than any drugs that I would take. And that was just, that's what I thought of. I just had to refocus like all my energies on just making me like stoked again, and it wasn't chasing alcohol and drugs. It was just, what do I want to do? And I have to go do that. And that was like my mindset. And then I was just like, people are like, oh, you're just switching addiction. Okay, so I'm addicted to surfing and snowboarding. Like, I don't care if that's your comeback. Like, oh, so now you're addicted to something else. Yeah. So now I live right across the street from Beaver Creek. I ski 150 days a year. And then the off seasons I go surfing.
We'll have to come up there and I'll shred it up with you one of these days.
Absolutely. Yeah, I live. I live in Avon, so I am. Yeah, come up whenever. We got Vail about 15 minutes down the road. We got Beaver Creek right across the street. But
isn't it funny how people mistake a passion for addiction in that case?
Absolutely. Yeah, because they're like, and then it's funny too because there's a stigma with addiction. And it's there's a lot of people in the recovery world, like one guy, Todd Crandall, who he did a documentary, Addict to Iron Man. So he was like, yeah, I just went from drinking and doing cocaine to now I do Ironmans all over the place. And so I kind of like, looked at tried to model my life after him, and he was like, yeah, some people just think, oh, you're just switching addictions. And, some people will be like, oh, so he's addicted to that. But the thing is, like, he still goes home to his family, but before, he'd disappear for like 3 or 4 days. Like, the addiction and the passion is a totally different thing. Like, he's passionate about Iron Man, but he's also passionate about his family.
Right.
So he could be addicted to Iron Man, but he's still passionate about his family, So there's always like this weird fine line. And I think what it is people that don't understand addiction try and use that as like one last jab at you. Like, oh yeah, well, you're still an addict because you're addicted to, going skiing every day. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm still an addict. I know if I drink again, like, I'll be drinking every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of, it's just kind of funny, but I'm to the part of my life where, I've really come to accept my life on all of its terms, where, yeah, I'm addicted, like people are like, hey, do you want this piece of candy? How many pieces you got? Just one? No,
right.
Because
the chocolate.
Because I'm going to go.
Yeah,
because we're going to have to stop off at 7-Eleven or something to get like candy on the way home, like.
Do you still to this
crazy.
day, like you're like, damn, I really would go for a beer right now? Like, is that still across your mind at this point, like years later?
So it's been, like 12 years, and not really. Like, I don't know. There's been a couple times where I'm just like a hot summer day, like I'll, be out like doing chores around the house and stuff. And I'll be like, oh man, I just need like something thirst quenching, and I'm always like, oh, a nice cold beer, and, I'm like, damn, I need the ice water.
I found the perfect replacement. I found the perfect replacement for that. For anyone listening, there's a company here that just started up. They're called Hop Tea. Have you ever heard of it? And they're freaking delicious. Like it's like a brewed. They brew it like a craft beer, but it's just tea. And they have some that's like chamomile. They have some with caffeine in it, and they add hops to it. So it's got kind of like that, kind of beer essence to it. But they're delicious. They're really good. I'll have to get them on this.
Nice.
Sometime.
Yeah, no, I'd love some hop tea.
Yeah, man, you have to check it out. They have them. I don't know if they'd have them up in your way yet. I haven't seen them in the Fort Collins Whole Foods, but the Whole Foods down here in Denver, if you come down, they have a ton of them down here.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
So Scott, what led you to Sober and Stoked? Tell us the story of building that out.
So my buddy that lived down in St. Thomas, Eugene,
mm-hmm.
he ended up, after he, opened a restaurant down there, he ended up moving back to Ocean City, Maryland. And then he had his own restaurant, kind of like a Panera Bread type of thing, but with like fish tacos. So it was like a restaurant mm-hmm. where it's like right off the boardwalk where you go in, you get like fish taco, you order, they make it for you, and then you kind of go sit down and eat it. So he had like this really awesome restaurant right there on the water, and he was surfing like, 300 days a year. And then I would go and I'd go, surf with him, and then he would come up to Beaver Creek Vale area and then snowboard with me. And he was like, man, this is great, and we'd always kind of joke around about, our life when we, party together. And he always wanted to do something. I mean, both of us were always like, how do we give back? Like, what's the next step? How do we get addicts like stoked about their life? And there's a thing which we always kind of like discuss. It's like, it's one thing to quit drinking, right? It's another thing to like be in recovery. Mm-hmm. So many people would be like, oh man, I drink so much, like I got to stop drinking. And then they just stop drinking, but they'd be miserable. And so there's like that missing link. And so that's kind of how we started Sober and Stoked. Like, we quit drinking, but then we went back and we got like our passion, and that was kind of the thing we always talked about, is like, we want people to realize, like, if you're going to stop drinking, that's one of the hardest tasks you're ever going to do in your life. So if you're already going to do like the most incredible thing, why not step it up a notch? Pick up a new hobby, get back tied into something else, rediscover yourself, find your passion. And so his thing was, when he, stopped drinking, he went out and he was like, I'm going to start my own business. So he started his own business. He was doing restaurants, and then he was like, I'm going to surf all the time. And then I was like, yeah. So then I was like, I got to snowboard all the time. And then I started my own company with grocery delivery out here in the mountains, and so we were like, we just wanted to be like that inspirational phase, and we didn't know how we were going to do it. And then Eugene was like, had this other company where he was kind of like promoting different restaurants and everything. So he needed a film crew, and they were kind of like, doing these interviews and everything. And he was talking about, coming out and snowboarding with me. And they're like, oh, you snowboard? He goes, yeah, well, once I quit drinking, that's me and my buddy, we surf and we snowboard. And they go, oh. He goes, actually, like, we kind of want to do like this movie about like different athletes in recovery. And they were like, let's do that. Like, oh my God, can we do this? And then he was like, yeah, well, all right, let's get it going. And then that's where, about a year ago, that's when we kind of sat down and said, hey, let's get this party started. And that's really how it came about. So we had this, film crew, and said, hey, you know what? That's actually a great plan, because you have shows like Intervention, where they're like, all right, here they are. This is the depths of their addiction. And then they're going to have an intervention, and they go to rehab. And then sometimes they're going to say, hey, they didn't make it out of rehab and they relapsed, or, hey, they made it out of rehab and here's a picture of them, and we wanted to be like, we got to show, kind of like, we didn't want to glorify like the addiction. We just wanted to like give them like, hey, this is how bad it was. And then, after, like a couple weeks, I started to feel better. After like a month, I started to feel really good. I still had cravings, but I started surfing again and things like that. And we wanted to kind of show like, the good news of recovery, which I don't feel that there was, there's enough of that out in the world. And that's kind of how it all started.
And what's the big picture vision with that?
So the big picture is we're going out and like doing screenings, and we actually have the movie on Vimeo, so you can actually go on soberandstoked.com and then like either get the DVD or get the rental off the website. We have like some hats and stuff too that we're selling. But we have our 501c3, our nonprofit, is filed, and we still probably have like another month or two, but we're going to end up doing gear drives. So we're going to get like, donated skis, outdoor gear, camping stuff, surfboards, boogie boards, running equipment, yoga mats, all sorts of things. And we want to get it to the hands of these addicts that are in recovery. So whether it's getting to the jail systems, to the halfway houses, things like that, we want, these people that are kind of like down and out, not knowing how they're going to stay sober and stuff, and be like, here, dude, here's a mountain bike. Like, go out, live your dream, find your passion. Like, we're here for you. We've kind of started to build the online community. And it's been incredible. But the thing is too, it's like, originally we're like, well, we just want to help like everybody, but we didn't feel like we'd be able to, like, we just didn't feel that there was going to be so many people stepping in to help out. And it's like, oh my God, like there's people reaching out to us all the time. Like, how can I help? What can I do? Like I run 7 halfway houses here, or I'm in charge of 40 halfway houses here. We're like, oh, okay, this is taking off. So, it's just been exciting, you
I'm
know,
not surprised,
and
honestly.
yeah, and the thing is too, is like, you know, like sometimes you're like, oh, I have this idea, but you don't realize, like, I don't know, you kind of think it's like too far fetched, you know? And I kind of feel like I was like, like who wants to listen to me? You know, like I have 5 DUIs on my record, you know, like, you know, and people are like, no, that's a great story. And I'm like, yeah, you know, I got to kind of look at it like
sharing your story,
you know,
being authentic.
It's
like, again, it goes back to that, looking at that 14er, you know, looking at the top, but just taking that first step.
Yeah.
Scott,
and that's what it is too. It's like,
I'm super grateful for you and for sharing your story, and I really appreciate it. I got to start wrapping this thing up, but best place for people to find you, soberandstoked.com.
Yep, soberandstoked.com, and then our Instagram is sober_and_stoked, and you can DM us there. You can hit us up on soberandstoked.com. We're on Facebook. We have a group, Sober and Stoked, and then there's also a private group for like addicts that don't want to share anything on a public wall, so they can go to Sober and Stoked Addicted to Life, is in parentheses, and that's where addicts actually, you know, we have people in early recovery. Hey, you know, I only have like 5 days, and then they can kind of put something on the wall. Then we have, you know, people that kind of come through and help out. So it's been awesome, but you can reach us out. Yeah. Soberandstoked.com, or on Facebook or Instagram.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate you. And any particular, like, I guess partnerships or resources that you're looking for currently that you can just shout out while, you know, for anybody that might be listening?
So we're actually looking to get in touch with some like outdoor gear companies. But that's kind of like in the works. We're also talking with Jackson Hole. So we want to do like a Sober and Stoked ski day. So we'd have, you know, kind of like people in recovery, whether it be like, you know, 24 hours or whether it be, you know, years. We're going to try and get with Jackson Hole and actually have like, you know, a group of us out there skiing and kind of like, you know, hanging out with each other. So we have talks with them, and then we're out, you know, talking with some different halfway houses and things like that. So, but, you know, the more the merrier. Once we get our 501c3, we're definitely going to want to branch out to some different companies and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely, man. Well, let me know how I can help. I'd love to come volunteer time if possible. I'll come right up there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, brother.
Let us know.
Well, hey, man, I really, really appreciate this. Again, I'm super grateful for you and what it is that you guys are doing. And those of you listening, don't forget to subscribe before you leave today. Please leave a review, and we will see you on the other side.